What is up, YouTube? My name is Evan, and today I'm bringing you a deck that I won a locals with, went undefeated. It's a lot of fun. It is Houndoom EX. It is a deck out stall deck, and that's pretty straightforward. And you may have seen a number of variants of this, but this variant works really well, and it has some really cool tricks to it. So we'll just kind of get right into it. We're running 4 copies of Houndoom EX. He's our primary way of running cards out of our opponent's deck, other than, of course, everyone running lots of copies of cards that draw and search cards out of their deck naturally anyway. And we're pretty much just concerned with his Melting Horn attack. So, 1 fire energy, it mills 2 cards off the top of your opponent's deck, 170 HP. He's pretty bulky. Second up, we're running 2 copies of Bunnelby, and that way they can kind of send each other into the deck if we get into a stall war. On their worst day, they're a 1 prize but far less HP version of Houndoom because they can burrow to get the top 2 cards off your opponent's deck, because of course he can attack twice with his Omega Barrage. But his Rototiller option is part of the main reason he made the cut here, really. Next up, we're running 1 copy of Stardust Promo Jirachi. This guy can be a very good way of buying turns, which of course is a way of stalling opponents. For anyone who runs Special Energy, which is a lot of decks, so we do have that 1 of for that. After all, 1 fire energy on him allows him to Stardust, that's fine. And in the worst case scenario, you can sacrifice him for 1 prize and buy a turn as well. We're also running 1 copy of Carbink, the one with Safeguard. Because some decks have a lot of trouble getting over this guy, and they'll have to Lysander around him, which means he's still not knocked out, so you can just bring him in next time you need to bring somebody in. That can buy you several turns, which of course every turn is another card off their deck kind of thing, or more if they feel the need to play supporters to try to get ahead. So our last Pokemon is pretty important. It's Celebi. It's got Theta Stop, so it's unaffected by abilities, which is nice because it means things like Greninja or say Decidueye EX GX can't touch him. Can't damage him, which is very nice. He has to be knocked out pretty much straight up by attacks is really the only way they have to do it, which is fantastic because his ability, which is the only reason he's here, not his attack, because we don't run any grass energies, makes it so that anytime he's knocked out by damage, that you get a coin toss chance, or actually anytime he's knocked out, period, you get a coin toss chance of him not only not being knocked out, meaning your opponent doesn't get a prize, but also he shuffles himself and everything attached to him into your deck. And the cool trick we do with him, I'm going to go ahead and tell you instead of waiting until we get all the way through the cards, is basically when you've got a Houndoom EX with a lot of damage on him and you don't have like a max potion or something, what you do is you Ninja Boy into your Celebi from your deck. And then, worst case scenario, instead of losing 2 prizes, you lose 1 and it's still your turn so you can bring in a new Houndoom or whatever you need to do. And best case scenario, this guy comes in, you get your coin toss right, it shuffles all your resources, your Fire Energy, your Fighting Fury Belt, whatever, and itself, most importantly, back into your deck, and your opponent gets 0 prizes, and you continue your stall war. So it's a pretty amazing trick. The Ninja Boy trick is always going to be beneficial to you. Sometimes it'll just be really, really, really beneficial. Anybody who's ever seen someone do the Celebi Ninja Boy trick definitely can attest to the fact that it can be really annoying, but it can also be a big momentum shift, a momentum killer for your opponent in this case. So that's all the Pokemon we run. Supporter-wise, I'm running a little heavier than I normally do, but that's because we really need to make sure we draw, and we have a lot of utilities supporters as well. So we've got 4 Sycamores. Remember that since we're playing a stallier deck, we'll have a lot more time, so we can afford to run more supporters, because we're not trying to tempo our opponents as much. We're running 3 Ns, pretty standard line there, 4 and 3. Next up, we're running 1 copy of Ace Trainer, because as soon as your opponent takes any prizes, we're virtually never going to take a prize. So as soon as they take 1 prize, this card will always work for you, basically, which is great. Even though it means they may be putting cards back into their deck, drawing them to 3 in some situations can be very good at slowing them down as well. So it can help you get back on your feet, and drawing 6 is very nice. N, obviously, sometimes he's good, sometimes he's bad, depending on how many prizes your opponent's taken, but this will always put them to 3. So just food for thought there. And we are also running 1 copy of Judge. Having played the deck, Judge is probably the only supporter I'm kind of a little bit questioning. I might have switched him for something as crazy as it sounds, maybe just Tierno, just to get the extra cards. This is kind of a free slot for me, but I want it to be card drawing. But I wanted it so that in the right situation, I could put my opponent to 4 and myself to 4 as well. It's a little less conditional than Ace Trainer in case our opponent hasn't taken any prizes yet. It can put them down early game. So, judgment call on that one. But it still served really well, and I didn't really regret it. We're running 3 copies of Team Rocket's Handiwork. I felt like 4 was a little much, but 3 allows us to play it without having to use our Versus Seekers 2/2 very much in order to make sure we can get hold of it. But obviously, it mills an average of 2 cards between those 2 coin tosses, so that's always good. It's like a free Houndoom attack, basically. We're running one Team Flare Grunt because energy stalling our opponent is a great way to buy time as well, because this deck is all about buying time until your opponent decks out. And we're also running one copy of Lysander. This is a great way to hurt our opponents as well. Just bring in anything that's slow or doesn't deal as much damage. Just anything that's not really a tremendous threat. It's a nice option to have sitting in the discard pile for Versus Seeker access. And finally, we are running our one aforementioned Ninja Boy. This is primarily to turn things into Celebi, but you can use it under other circumstances to get other Pokemon out of your deck quickly if you need to, you know, surprise Jirachi, stuff like that. So it definitely has more than just one use. It's a pretty cool card in the right decks, and this is definitely the kind of a deck where you can benefit from having it. So moving right along, those are our supporters. Pretty heavy supporter line, like I say, but yeah, that's kind of the nature of the deck, and it also helps keep Vileplume from being too devastating to us. Item-wise, we're running 4 Versus Seekers, because we are just supporter happy as heck in this deck. And we're also running 4 Trainer's Mail, because getting the right supporters and trainers at the right time is always really crucial, so we're running 4 of that. Kind of a no-brainer, really. And because we have a lower Pokemon count, we are opting for 4 Ultra Balls. And Ultra Ball because we kind of need to access Houndoom EX, and at the time I played this deck, we couldn't play Nest Ball, although these could easily turn into Nest Balls. So just food for thought there. I mean, you can definitely go either way. I just kind of like the ability to discard cards I no longer needed in this situation, and that way if I use something like N or Ace Trainer, I was less likely to top deck cards I didn't need for that particular matchup. So you can go that way. I think Nest Ball is probably going to be a little bit better in the long run, but like I say, when I built this deck, I couldn't run Nest Ball yet. So we're also running another 4 of, and that's Fighting Fury Belt. This is basically just for the HP gain, obviously, because it applies to every Pokemon in the deck, and plus 40 is amazing. It can really put your Houndooms out of reach, and it can even put things like Bunnelby and Jirachi out of one-hit KO range, which is pretty nice, too. Especially if we're energy depriving our opponents, for example, they may not be doing their biggest hit every turn, so this can be a pretty good way to buy more and more time. Yet another 4 of, we're running 4 Max Potions. This one's pretty obvious. I mean, we're only ever going to commit 1 energy to a Pokemon, especially primarily Houndoom. So this is just a great way to just heal all their effort right off of him. You know, he can easily be a 3-hit KO for many opponents, if not at least a 2-hit KO. This is like a free turn, basically. So pretty important card there. And then, of course, Energy Deprivation, like I say, a good strategy. Enhanced Hammer, there are tons of decks right now that run Special Energy, and Enhanced Hammer exploits that pretty heavily, can set them back pretty hard, especially decks that like say, Double Dragon Energies, but definitely things that run DCE as well. They do not like it. And Crushing Hammer hits everybody. Great stall card. Worst case scenario, you play it, it doesn't happen to work. Oh well, keep going. You know, draw on. It's a great way to maximize the potential of things that shuffle in and draw. So definitely nice, especially since we have a long game, so you don't have to worry if you get a bunch in your opening hand. You're like, well, that's cool, and you can just sit back a couple of turns and just play Hammer every time your opponent dares play an energy. So it's all good there. We're running 1 Super Rod. This mainly gets back your fire energies because we do only have 7 and you may prize some. So it's a nice way to keep your numbers up. And you can also use it to get back Houndoom if you need to. So it's kind of just there as a nice little save your butt under the right circumstances kind of card. And we are running 1 Parallel City. This is mainly as a hose to decks like, say, Mega Gardevoir or Mega Ray. But it can also be used to hit things that just like lots of things on their benches. Like, for example, Volcanion doesn't particularly care for this. And you can play the red side toward them as well to reduce damage if that might help out, because in some matchups that can definitely help out and stall your opponent yet again. So it's just a nice one of. You can also get rid of other stadiums with it, of course, but it's just a nice option to have access to. And finally, as far as our energy goes, it's pretty straightforward. We don't really need any special energies or anything. So it is just straight up 7 fire energies, nothing more elaborate than that. It's enough that we can hit it pretty reliably. We don't have to run and take any space in our deck to run cards that search energies, really. And, you know, like I say, no special energies means we're not very vulnerable to energy removal ourselves, and we do have ways of getting it back if we do run low. So, just to make sure, because Houndoom always wants to be attacking every turn, or Bunnelby always wants to be firing an attack every turn, so you definitely want to make sure that you have that energy by the time you're done drawing and playing for the turn. And that is the deck. It's a lot of fun if you're looking for something different but still pretty successful that can catch people off guard. This is the way to go. A lot of decks are very aggressive with their drawing and searching, so they'll help you deck them out. pretty fun to play. I recommend giving it a try. Until next time, like, comment, subscribe, and I will see you next time.